The Clippers sent Chris Paul home, sparking a wave of questions among fans and the media. Recent reports have shed light on the situation, including details about a Halloween party Chris hosted for his teammates, an event that only 3 people attended. This story highlights the disconnect within the team and provides insight into why things unraveled between Chris Paul and the Clippers. The following report explores the key moments and decisions that led to his departure. But before we get started, Ramona Shelburne handled the reporting. She is an excellent journalist for ESPN. The link to her report is in the description. Please go and read it. However, Chris was sent home past midnight due to heat exhaustion. He revealed on Instagram that he had been removed off the team that will one day retire his jersey. That sparked fear on social media. What happened? What did he do? What did they do? Well, it all began when they brought him in. Chris agreed to a 1-year, $3.6 million vet minimum this summer. The organization envisioned him as a low-maintenance, experienced leader at the end of the bench. James Harden is the exact opposite. They're talented and respected, but they're not particularly vocal leaders. However, several players expressed concern about Chris Paul potentially taking away their playing time. This tension contributed to the uneasy team dynamic. Lawrence Frank, the front office manager, promised Chris Paul that he would have a minor role, which was surprising given Paul's competitive nature and experience. It's like having Russell Westbrook on your team and saying, don't worry, he won't play much. He'll just sit at the end of the bench. He will be all right. Good luck. But Chris said, you know what? That's fine, as long as I can compete. I mean, I'm 41 years old, but I can be an extension of the coaching staff. So not a great start, but after the season began, things really went downhill. Every time CP made a suggestion, folks were like, who the hell is this guy? And why does he tell me how to do my job? For example, he proposed that a teammate adjust his training practices. As a result, the Clippers crew felt endangered. He challenged the players and instructed them on how to run the plays. People were insulted, but some claim it wasn't even the suggestions. Another team executive stated that it is the way he does it and the delivery. That is how Chris is. He wears you out. He persuades, right? He is often correct, which irritates you the most. Then he'll walk around to everyone until you agree with him, which you will see repeatedly here. However, things worsened behind the scenes during practice. So Chris was leading the second unit in training camp and kicking the starters. Ty Lue even played Chris for about 20 minutes in preseason, and somebody said, yo, what about a small role? But that made Chris feel even more emboldened to do his thing, and that's when everything broke. That executive asked you if all they wanted was a cheerleader. Why did they sign Chris Paul? So game 1 versus the Utah Jazz. Utah wins by 21 points. Chris immediately attempts to gather everyone for a team meeting in the locker room. Nobody's interested. A few nights later, following a victory over New Orleans, Chris and his wife hosted a Halloween party at the arena. The party was fully prepared with food, decorations, and a focus on team building, yet only Bradley Beal and one other teammate attended. This lack of engagement reflected deeper issues within the team. In the following weeks, the Clippers went on a losing streak, including defeats to teams Chris Paul had previously played for. Paul grew frustrated when the coaching staff didn't consult him on defending key players like Devin Booker or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So it's as if they had this preconceived notion about his function on the squad and how he would act, which was vastly different from what Chris had envisioned. The coaches, however, were the most angered here. Remember the rumor that Ty Lue and Chris had not spoken for weeks. In actuality, they did converse, but Chris was offering Ty suggestions for team meetings and additional practice. And then Ty said, by the way, you're not going to play tonight for the first time in your entire life. You are sitting on the bench for the entire game. So when Chris started getting DNP, they truly loathed each other. But there was another coach here, Jeff Van Gundy, and you want to express your opinions. According to ESPN, he and CP had an ongoing feud throughout the year. Do you recall this guy as a broadcaster?
When I go to the writers to tell me who can guard in this league, I'll put a gun to my own head.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that guy and Chris Paul working together? So everything blew up after the Dallas game. Remember, Kawhi had just returned. CP proposed that they swap coverage of Klay Thompson because it was cool. I felt a little winded. John Collins then guarded Klay. That, however, was Van Gundy's role. It did not work out properly, so Van Gundy separated. He is the defense coach, so he confronts Chris aboard the team jet. He probably wasn't being subtle about it, if you know how this guy speaks, right? And then Chris becomes really pissed off. He gets back onto the plane and approaches Chris Dunn and Kawhi. He has them get up and says, "Hey, was that a suggestion I was making, or was I commanding you to switch?" And I was like, "Oh, that was a suggestion." And Chris was like, "The C suggestion. What is wrong with that?" And that's when Van Gundy remarked, "You don't have that much leeway here anymore." Now this came after Chris had been spoken to by coaches. Ty Lue worked in the front office for the entire year before being issued a final warning, so they figured we couldn't wait much longer. We don't care whether we're halfway across the nation on a road that's falling apart. This is far too much drama for the 12th player on the bench. It's preferable to send him home. So front office man Frank said, "Okay, if that's what we're doing, I'll tell Chris in person." The meeting has now been put back until it is completely stalled for a variety of reasons. But this was at 3 a.m. Chris was stunned. He didn't see it coming. He even got Brooke Lopez into the room to back him up, as Chris apparently does. When someone disagrees with him, he will involve others to explain why you are wrong, and he is correct. But the choice had already been made, so they said, "Hey, look, you're heading home, but you are a legend. We plan to retire your jersey here someday. Do you want to send out a joint press statement announcing that we'd both decided on this?" Chris said no. He rushed out of the room and posted on Instagram, "I was just sent home." So the reports were correct. It wasn't as if everything happened at once. Little things throughout the season led up to CP3 and Jeff Van Gundy's dispute on the plane. But the Clippers made a mistake. They were aware of his leadership style, which would never be appropriate for an experienced squad with veteran coaches. And once they started losing games like that, it became poisonous. By the way, when he says, "Oh, Ty Lue didn't talk to me for weeks," it's as if he actually did. He talked to Chris all year and told him exactly what he thought, but nothing ever changed. So what's the sense of repeating the same conversation for the 100th time? I believe we've all been there, but I think this one statement captured it best. To be honest, Chris Paul appears to have assessed veterans throughout his career while also serving as a solid leader for young players. So I guess he came out as patronizing and micromanaging to the vets, who are the young people, but that will come across as a leader who is obsessed with minutia and a losing squad of vets. This was never going to work, especially at 41 years old, and he can no longer lead the squad with his on-court performance. So this didn't work out, and I'm not shocked. But CP's old team, the Spurs, are now much ahead of schedule, as are all of the teams he played with and then eventually departed. They took off, but they just lost the NBA Cup, right? However, we learn a lot about who this team was without Victor Wembanyama over the last month. But now that he's returned, the San Antonio Spurs should worry the rest of the NBA.